Welcome to another edition of LinkedIn Live for Women Leaders. Our topic for today is successful conscious leadership. The neurological transformation is key. I'm Helena de Munk. I'm your host. I'm a transformation guide for smart, conscious, and high achieving women, supporting them to break their inner glass ceiling and find fulfillment and unstoppable momentum. And I am thrilled to be here today with Ragini Michaels. Rajni, welcome.
Big
You
change.
are also a transformation guide, a coach, and you have a special focus on paradox mindset and or mindset, which I love. I think we are going to talk a lot about that also as like the entry of our successful conscious leadership talk today. So tell us a little bit more about what you do in that area, in that field.
The primary work that I'm doing in that field is to focus on moving us beyond the conceptual understanding of paradox and a both and mindset into one that actually becomes an easily accessible behavior. So that and in order to do that, you need two things, which most of us don't have readily available. And that's what my work is all about these days. That's basically all I'm focusing on is wanting to educate people and help them create, or I should say, bridge that gap between a conceptual understanding and an actual available behavior that can come and meet the need that you have at any moment in time. So that's what my focus is primarily these days. I see a lot of talk about paradox. I've talked with people about paradox. And one of the things that I consistently see is, especially for very well-educated people, is the minute that we start talking about polarities, which would be a both and mindset, many people feel, I know the law of polarities, yes. But what I then see happening is the book closes. Right?
Mm.
It's like I got the concept. So I'm more interested in helping you transform that concept into an actual active, on demand capacity to just shift and think that way. And in order to do that, you need these two things that I'm focusing on almost exclusively these days, which is how to create a new neural pathway in your brain that can hold this new behavior. So you make the transition from concept to actual action. That's the first one, because that really is needed. And I can explain why later if you want to know.
Yes,
And the
absolutely.
second thing is the re-education of the unconscious process. Because unless you can answer the unconscious mind's preconditioned resistances to going into a both and mindset, you'll find it very hard to get past concept into behavior. So those are the
Yeah.
two things that I focus on. And my background is in both neuro-linguistic programming. I've been a trainer in that since 1988. I trained in Europe and in India and around the States as well. And so learning how to generate more choices in your neurology for any given set of behaviors is my forte. With NLP, you
Mhm.
can do that.
Yeah.
And so the key is when we're not removing anything from our brains, we're simply adding a new choice. We're
Yeah.
all very good at doing either or, right? I
Mm.
either choose this hand or I choose this hand. Or when you get stuck in the middle, that is where you want to go. Didn't I meet this woman named Ragini somewhere? Couldn't she help me with this? Because
Mm.
yes, that's where my work comes in, right in that tiny little area that actually influences us every day in
Yeah.
so many ways that we're not really that conscious of. So that's
You
one
call
from
it
the
a tiny
NLP.
little, yeah, you call it a
I
tiny
call it
little
tiny.
area, but it is a very important area, isn't it? For people listening in, we are talking about successful conscious leadership. I would like to open the doors here for all levels of leadership. Self leadership in organizations, leadership in communities, conscious
Yes,
leadership is needed everywhere. It is relevant for you, whether you want it or not, whether you
this is
know
true.
it or not. It is so relevant for everybody. And I can see that so many people are in this binary thinking, in this either or. Like you say, is it my left hand or my right hand? I
Right.
have one article written a couple of years ago, and the title was Embracing Paradoxes is basically the key for leadership because it is so much
Yes.
broader than choosing this either or. And I understand the implementation of that, knowing how
Mhm.
to do that rather than knowing that it should be or it could be is a very important one. Yeah. So you do very
Yeah. And
important work. Yes.
it's very helpful as people tell me when they get it down and they start to work with it and
Mm-hmm.
practice it, which is of course what you always have to do with everything in life is
Mm-hmm.
practice it. But I think if the listeners stop for a moment and ask yourself, where is it that you feel like caught between a rock and a hard place? That's a common phrase that people use, at least in America, to refer
Mm-hmm.
to this. On the one hand, I want to do this, but on the other hand, I want to do that. Or I'm of two minds. Like, I want to go out with my partner tonight because they've asked me to go with them. On the other hand, I have this project I'm doing at work. So, which is more important, my business or my partner? And these are the kind of little things, but are actually big things that we work with every day. So, if you're listening and you want to just ask yourself, where in your life do you feel this kind of, you can feel it in your body. You go back and forth. And then if you can think of something, it might just be helpful to have some concrete experience in your mind as we just talked today and go through it, because your experience, if it's like mine, will primarily be I have to make a choice between one of these. I can't do them both at the same time. I can't stay home and do my work, and I can't go out with my partner to this dinner where they want me to be my plus one. I can't do both of
Mm-hmm.
those. So just to experience that, because you get satisfaction from both. So this is the reason why it's a problem, because you don't want to choose one over the other because you won't get that satisfaction on the one you don't get to do. So it's stress producing for us. And that's what we're working to grant you a way to be able to look at the both and mindset, which won't make the decision for you, but it does bring you back to emotional calm. And from there, that centered place, that more calm, being just present to the challenge, you make the choice that's best for you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we want to do, is make the choice that's best for us. It could be going to the event, or it could be saying, honey, I love you greatly, but I got to do this, is where my heart is tonight. So having that sense of inner calm coming up, of that sense of equanimity, which really refers to a state of emotional balance where you're calm and you're not doing this anymore. You're just like, okay, I get what the trouble is. I want both, can't do both, but I'm still got to make a choice. So, this is a way to help you make a choice from a place of calm, centered presence to the challenge of the moment, because it is a challenge. Which one am I going to do?
Yeah.
So, anyway, if you're listening and you got something in your life where that's happening, whether it's at work, with your family, with your relationship, with your sense of faith or purpose, any place where there's a, you might just bring it to listening and see if some of what we might be talking about today could benefit from learning more about how to not just have the conceptual understanding, right, Helena? We want to
Mm-hmm.
have the actual behavior, because, gosh, the world is such a mess right now in terms of
Yeah.
clarity about where
I
we're
want to.
going.
I wanted to say to ask, is this something that you see happening more and more? This stress that people, this anxiety that people experience because there's so many options, there's so many choices to make, there's so many triggers around us, there's social media, there's the news, there's whatever, and we feel like we have to make choices all the time. These binary
Right.
things like this yes or no, one or zero, and some people then are very decisive in, okay, I choose. And other people are like procrastinating or paralyzed because they just don't know what to do. That's the stress moment that you are mentioning. The example that you give, I have these two options tonight or later this week. These are the, I would say, sometimes the easy ones in terms of you need to make a choice, but probably, or maybe there's no real guilt involved. But in a lot of these choices that we make, there's also the should haves or the could haves, or guilt or expectations from others that are involved. When I look at women, for example, women leaders, women executives, it's this constant, I don't call it balance because once again, that's binary, constant integration of professional life and private life, of
A big
all
one.
the, yeah, all the expectations. So I think that this is something that is very relevant to so many people. Yeah.
I think it is because if we don't have another way to deal with these kinds of challenges other than making an either or choice, then what we tend to do is either step away and say, I'm not playing, right? Or we polarize. And
Mm,
polarization is so rampant these days.
yeah.
And most of us, we don't think of it as polarization. Most people don't. It's just, this is my opinion and it's right.
And we can
The
spread it
problem,
everywhere.
yeah, yeah. The problem is
Mm,
behind that I'm right is also the other viewpoint, the opposing opposite viewpoint is wrong. And that just
exactly.
creates an incredibly tense, stressful, again, more stressful environment that our nervous systems really aren't that capable of handling that much
Mm,
stress. And if you say, I'm not going to play, I'm not going to make a decision, that's just as stressful because you, of course, have made a decision
yeah.
not to play.
Not to make one. Yeah. Mm,
Yeah. And so it's very complicated. So we need another option. Really, that's what I'm saying, and what a lot of people are saying. In the amount of complexity that we have today, and the amount of ambiguity, and the amount of uncertainty that we have to deal with every single day, it's just too much. So we
yeah.
need another way to be able to deal with it. And paradox, a paradox mindset, understanding the nature of paradox, what it is, that it's fundamental to our experience in life, and we need a way to deal with it.
Mm,
And so a paradox mindset, or a both and mindset, just to keep it less conceptual, is it either or is it both and? But how do I do a both and mindset? People go,
mhm.
I don't get it, because I really want, I don't want, and this is what happens. I just like,
Yeah.
so it's
Mm,
just fascinating. It's fascinating to me. And particularly, oftentimes, women are more pulled to this a lot of times than men are, because I don't really know why, except I don't know why, so I'm not even going to say it. Maybe you know why.
mm.
Why are women? Because you focus on women, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So why do you think
Well,
women are more pulled to exploring this kind of stuff experientially? And conceptually, I think we're all pretty much the same.
mhm.
But I think most of my courses are filled with women. I'm always
Because
curious about why.
we are focused on harmony, on integration. We are focused on inclusivity. We don't like the conflicts. I'm not saying
Yeah,
conflict is good or bad. There's a lot of, we can do another session about that. But we don't like the confrontation. And we like to solve and resolve conflicts, also our internal conflicts. And
yeah,
we are open to nuance. We are open to see if there are possibilities that basically serve all the causes, all the stakeholders, all the things that are relevant. And
yeah,
it's more intense. Sometimes it takes more time because it's easy to say yes or no, and we
yeah,
go for that, and all the rest is collateral damage. But this is something that women don't often do. Yeah. By the
yeah.
way, in general, apart from this specific topic, more than 70% of everything that is personal development and growth is invested in by women. We're more focused on that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we are. We are. And
Mhm.
that makes sense, as you say, because basically women have been doing both and forever.
That's true. That's true. And I also think that we are so confronted with this binary world that we are
Yeah,
just looking for alternatives that make it more livable, that make it
yeah,
more inclusive, because we live in a very polarized world, more and more
we
and
do. And
more.
it's
And
getting
if
worse
you
and
look
worse.
at the results of that behavior or policy in politics in organizations, if you look at who are suffering most of that, once again, it's women and children. And that's probably also why women are much more focused and organized to do something about that.
Yeah. Let me speak to the binary thing that you mentioned, because it's really relevant to changing the behavior, which is what we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
In my course of learning neurolinguistic programming, at one point in time, you become aware that there's this thing in your brain called a direction filter. And it has two options set up in it. It's designed to help us survive. First thing you have to understand is everything in the brain and the unconscious mind has one primary goal: physical survival. A lot starts to make sense when you realize that everything that we have to deal with at the bottom line is focused on keeping us alive physically. Now, in today's world, we also want emotional survival, we want mental survival, and we want spiritual survival. Okay. And the strategy that nature has given us for staying alive physically works great for physical survival. It sucks badly for all the other levels. So here's what it is: this direction filter, whenever we interface with reality, whatever it is, we have two options. We can either go towards it because the brain has ascertained that it's safe, or it says, no, don't do that, and you move away.
Yeah.
Now, this is the only option in the brain, basically, for how to relate to life. You either go towards, you go away. Duality, right? You've got two options only. So what we're doing is we are installing an additional choice in that direction filter through the work that we do, which gives it a both and choice. And what we're saying is we want you to both move towards the both and mindset and move away from the either or mindset in the context of dilemmas. So we're not taking away anything. We're not taking away the binary choice. We're simply offering an additional choice in the circumstance that generates the most stress for us as human beings, right? So
Yeah.
once you have this in your brain, then the whole world becomes bigger because it's just bigger. Binary
The
is
cake
very
gets
limited.
bigger. Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I say, if what we're doing emotionally and mentally and spiritually is falls into I'm for this and against that, that's the binary choice. I want to go towards this. Gives me safety. I want to go away from that. This is dangerous. So in America right now, of course, we have the binary, the polarization, political polarization. There's no like camaraderie going on here where people are talking to each other. It's I'm pro-Republican and anti-Democrat. I'm pro-liberal and anti-conservative. It's crazy when you see it because there's no chance for dialogue. There's no chance for expanded understanding. There's no
Exactly.
chance, no empathy, no compassion. It just gets squished out as people get more and more polarized.
Yeah.
So, because our world is changing so fast and going into more complexity, we really got to have a both and mindset, not necessarily to save the world. If you're not interested in that, probably wouldn't be on this call listening if you weren't interested in that. But in your heart of hearts, it's important to you in your own life to find that point of balance. I call it the centeredness quotient. How centered are you? Can you bring yourself back to your centered place? And because between two extremes is the center, which is where you want to be, right? In terms of perception. Can you do that? Can you bring yourself back here and just be clear about what's happening? Because polarization, you're going to feel polarized too. Anyway, it's very fascinating, but that's the one thing where we're talking about the neurological transformation. This has got to happen in your brain if you want the behavior. So first thing you got to do is be honest with yourself and say, I get it, but just conceptually, I don't really have the behavior. If you don't have the behavior, then happily I can say there's a way to learn it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other piece, these are the two most important things, and this relates to neurological transformation as well, is the re-education of your unconscious mind, which is operating with conditioning and programming that it was given when you were born. You're born into your family, your culture, etc. And that's what's there. And unless you make conscious effort to change it, to re-educate it to what you've learned through your own experience or through whatever, you've learned that you need more than that. Okay, it may not be
Hmm.
right. And so you've got a different opinion, but then you're in a dilemma too. Do I follow? Is it right to make money? All right, is it? But my faith path says, "Oh, you're getting to be too wedded to the dollar. It's too important to you. You're making too many decisions about dollar based on dollar." And the other side is going, yeah, see, that's not good. You need to do it over here. So you have business and your faith. I feel a lot of women in business have that conflict going on around money.
Absolutely. Even with faith can be one of the components, but in general, women entrepreneurs, not only women entrepreneurs, I also see a lot of women executives having issues in salary negotiations, promotion negotiations. They don't particularly have a problem in sales, in negotiating deals for their organizations. But when it is about them, it's like money is a dirty word. It's like making a lot of money means that you are greedy or that you are cheating or whatever, that we don't deserve it. This is a very, very relevant topic for a lot of women. Yeah,
It
absolutely.
is. It
Yeah.
really is. It
So
has a lot to do.
if we could only dare embrace this paradox and have the and or, because that would make the lives of so many women so much better. Because most women, if they make money, they start sharing. I know a lot of women that make a lot of money, that have very successful businesses and do so much good for the world. It would be wonderful to build more capacity there also, Ragini.
Absolutely. I know one of my
Mm.
teachers, he says, my goal is to make money and do good.
Yeah,
So that's a very
beautiful.
balanced approach. It's the same.
Hmm.
So, yeah. And I think I have a lot of women, I work with a lot of women around just that issue. And it's not
Yeah.
that it's not that we tell you how to make more money. That's not the
Hmm.
point. The point is to get you at ease with being able to have money and do good at the same time instead of
Yeah.
just doing good and opting to be poor just
Yeah.
because you haven't said it's okay to be good. It's not a both and. So we want to get it to be
Exactly.
both and.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
And that's the unconscious part basically playing a big part in this. Yeah. Mm.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
have a background in physiological psychology is what my degree is in. And then I worked with hypnotherapy for years before I went into NLP and, you know, that sort of
Hmm.
thing. So the unconscious mind is the mind whose permission you've got to have to change your behavior. This is the
Yeah.
fundamental bottom line that most people don't know.
Hmm.
If your unconscious mind is not in agreement, it will not let you behave in the new way, right? It'll
Yeah.
let you think about it, but you can't
Yeah.
like
And
do it.
then once again, you're in the conceptual area.
Yes.
Nothing
Yeah. Yeah.
happens. You just think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of stress happens. So
Exactly.
yeah, so part of it is learning how to deal with the unconscious mind and how to deal with your neurology. When
Yeah.
these two things get taken care of and you know how to do it and you practice it, because I'm sorry to say, there's no way you can get a new behavior without practice,
Hmm.
unless it's like a one-time, usually very intense response that gets, it's usually called a phobia. It's just the one. It's like walking down the street and having a dog jump up in one of the cars and bark at you, and you go, oh! And
Yeah.
thereafter, every time you walk down the street, past the car, you go, yeah, it's you learned when you pass cars with there might be a dog in it, so get stressed out. It's rare that somebody learns the both and mindset that way, but it can happen.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
generally, it brings us back to practice. We have to practice
Yeah.
it. But once you know what to practice, that's the key. You don't know what to practice if you don't know about this direction filter and you don't have other things. The other thing that I want to share with you, if I can, because it's important to the re education of the unconscious mind. Many years ago, I was trying to figure out why I was miserable all the time because I wanted to be happy all the time. And some of the things that unfolded there was it took me more into my exploration of mysticism and spirituality and meditation and doing retreats and that whole arena of experience. And what I began to wonder was how come there was this little slice of our species that were able to be calm, present, and centered no matter what came their way. How did they manage to keep that centered balance point? And those were the people that were called mystics. And so what I did is I took my NLP knowledge and I made a model of mystic psychology. Now, not their spirituality, not their faith path, but just their psychology. How is it different from mine? Because they were able to do something I wasn't. I did a model of them, and there were 7 ways of looking at the world that were the same in all of them, no matter their gender, the time they lived, their faith path. None of that mattered. They all had 7 things that were the same. So there are 3 of those which are really relevant to what we're talking about here. And I'd love to share them if I may, because
Yes,
they're.
please. You make me very curious. I'm sure the listeners also.
Here's the thing. I in no way mean to imply that we're all stupid, because we all know these 3 things. We do. We all know them. They're not unfamiliar to us at all. The first thing that they highly valued was impermanence. We all know impermanence is a reality, right? But the thing that made it different in their psychology is it was relevant to the way they chose to live their life. It was relevant. And so I thought that's really interesting. And it was relevant because they talked about always bringing impermanence to the head of the conference table when a decision was to be made. They always brought impermanence and sat it down. And I thought that's cool, because we all know that. We all know everything is impermanent. We do not accept it. It's not valued for us. Primarily, it's not relevant at the unconscious level of the mind. We've never been taught that impermanence was relevant to our happiness or our ability to succeed in life. So consequently, it doesn't play in to the formula the unconscious mind has for success or happiness or being centered and peaceful. So that was a major difference, because for the mystic psychology, it was like number 1, babe, never forget everything is impermanent. Right? The second thing that they said in their psychology was the way they looked at polarities. Okay? Polarities for them were not in opposition to each other. They were one harmonious whole. And that is how they were looked at. Always one harmonious whole, even though it looked like they were in conflict, right? Should I go left or should I go right? I can't go both at the same time. So we would go, which should I do? That's what we're talking about today. But the mystic looks at it and says, it's just one harmonious whole. That's where where does impermanence happen? Right there, right? Neither one of those polarities stays forever. It doesn't. It changes into the opposite, right? That was like accepted, like a duh. Polarities are just one thing. They're not 2 in opposite. We're not programmed that way. We don't see it that way. We're stuck with a direction filter that says it's either this or that, right? The third item that was very different, the highest priority, the highest value, let me put it that way, was movement. It wasn't love, it wasn't compassion, it wasn't empathy, it wasn't mindfulness, it was movement. And I thought, wow, that's interesting as the highest value. But when I looked at the fact that they were talking about impermanence always being their highest value, and then that it showed up, it was held in place by this movement between polar opposites, then of course everything's always going to be changing. So movement became relevant to happiness, peace of mind, and being able to be centered. So I went, this is pretty cool. I wonder how I could get that in my brain. So that is what triggered the work to get to some place where we actually have a process, a 6-step process that helps us actually reprogram the unconscious mind and recode the brain and the neurology to be able to have this additional both and paradox mindset, which is absolutely essential if we want to be happy, be calm, find our center again, and have these bigger perceptions, have more of the bigger picture. That's why you asked me to talk, and it was like neurological transformation is the key, right? To getting the new behavior.
This unconscious work, you have a program for that. This is one of the links that we have put in the comments where people can check out and get more information about this 6-step program for the unconscious mind. Can you just give us a hint or give us one of the things that are very relevant in this process that people could maybe also already try and feel like an
Sure,
impact or a change?
absolutely. Remember, I asked you to pick polarity in the beginning if you had one. Okay, so here's the thing: if it's a really tough one for you, like I had somebody, let me just say, her polarity was being helpful versus being helpless. Okay, they were opposites. She could be helpful or she could feel helpless. And what I ask people to do, actually, the first step in the process is to choose your polarity that's giving you trouble. Okay.
Mhm.
It could be being stingy or being giving. That could be a place where you're stuck. It could be being rich, being poor, could be being beautiful, being ugly. I'm just picking really simple ones here. My needs versus your needs. Okay. Those kinds of things. Or we could stay with the current polarization of the day, which is politically, where do you stand and how do you feel about the opposite stance? This is
Mhm.
very valuable to take a look at. So if you put those down in front of you, and then what we use in our work is an infinity loop, right? So this is like the first step that we discovered is you take an infinity loop and you put it down. Why an infinity loop? Because it's moving infinitely. So it really goes into the third thing that I mentioned, which is movement is the key.
Mhm.
So take that infinity loop and put down inside one loop. Which one shall we work with, Helena? Which one's relevant to you that we could talk about? Any
I
polarity
would
that has a struggle
say,
for you.
oh gosh, I would say work focus and private focus, personal
Okay.
focus.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say work focus, private focus. Okay. If that doesn't speak to you, you could put in rich and poor. You could put
Mhm.
in happy or sad. You can put in loving or hateful. There's like a billion polarities. In case you hadn't noticed, we swim in a sea of polarities when you start
Yeah.
to really look and you go, my gosh, no wonder I'm so stressed out.
Just
They're everywhere. Yeah.
one question,
Huh?
Rajani, because you say, for example, work or life or personal life, this is something that like you feel you have to choose for. When you say happy or sad, those are two emotions. Um, so it's not only about choices, it's about states, it's about situations,
It,
it's about everything basically can be in polarity.
Yes, basically everything can be in polarities because that's life. It goes
Hmm.
back and forth. I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to be happy, we're going to be sad, we're going to have
Hmm.
days when we feel beautiful and days when we feel ugly or strong and weak. The point is the strategy that this is the strategy aspect, because we're really talking strategy here. A both and strategy is smarter than an either or strategy for solving the fact of so many polarities in life. So the strategy that we are taught is go for what you want, try to make it permanent, and go for and eliminate what you don't want
Hmm.
permanently. And you note that I'm saying permanently because that is what drives us. We look for what we want to be done, to make it, and it's done and it stays,
Yeah.
doesn't change.
We want
This
to
is
have
so
that
we're
status
so
quo.
yeah, want the status quo. That's not life. According to
Mhm.
these three things we talked about, life isn't going to keep you there. It's going to keep moving you on to whatever is your next
Mm,
experience in life. So,
yeah,
what we're looking at here is a different strategy. Rather than setting up what you like against what you dislike, and then you can choose I'm going to put all my energy into getting what I want, or I'm going to put all my energy into getting rid of what I don't want. And that after 40 years of private practice working with human beings, I can tell you that's our strategy. Right?
yeah,
So this strategy is what would happen if I could be neither for nor against either one. They're just life experiences. And there's going to be one, it's going to dissipate. Then I'm going to have the opposite. It's going to dissipate. I'm going to have the old one again, happiness. Then it's going to dissipate. I'm going to be sad. Then it's going to dissipate. I'm going to be happy again. And that's why we
mhm,
use the infinity loop because it shows
yeah,
us when you add in movement, there's something's always changing.
yeah,
Impermanence is verified. Okay.
yeah.
Um,
But then we also go to a level of acceptance, basically. that these things happens. You step away from resistance.
Yes. But
And
you
for
can't
that,
step
you
away
need a
from
certain
resistance.
level of consciousness. Yeah.
Yes, you do. And you need your unconscious mind on your side because it's going to fight you. It's going to
Mm, of
say,
course.
no, wait a minute. Yeah, sadness is not okay. Ugliness is not okay. Poverty is, or wealth is not okay. It's not okay for you to think about your work so much, or it's not okay to leave your work because you have family. It's just, it's not going to stop unless it's re-educated to the
Mm-hmm.
value of being able
Mm.
to become bigger than the dilemma, bigger picture. You can't get a bigger picture without a new perspective.
Yeah.
You've got to have a new perspective.
Mhm.
And that's why we're drawing on this mystical perspective because it's radically different. And it once you get it in there, all the students I have are like awestruck. I have one student who said, "Why didn't somebody tell me this earlier and give me a way to do it?" So
Mhm.
you asked me to give an example that you could work with. Let me get back to that for just a second.
Mm.
If you've got two polarities, a set of polar opposites in your head, and you've got them inside of an infinity loop, the first step, which you're going to recognize, is what's the strength of each one and what's the weaknesses of each one. And here's where the interesting rub comes. Okay. Most people will find a lot of benefits or strengths to the polarity that they want. Okay. They will not be able to find very many weaknesses to the polarity they want. Okay. They'll be able to find almost no strengths to the weakness, to the one they don't want,
Yeah.
and they'll have tons of weaknesses. So this right there shows you, because this is your mind you're looking at, but this is your unconscious process. It tells you that there's places where, what was it we were doing the other day? I was working with someone, and I think it was, let me go back to the helpless. Okay, helpful and helpless. When she got to filling in the strengths of helpless, she couldn't do it. There was no strength to being helpless. Now that
Mhm.
if that happens to you, it tells you this your process has got no reason to open to the experience of helplessness at all. It's got no reason to. There's nothing valuable there.
Yeah.
Of course, there is. One of the things she found out, which changed it for her, was she realized she could give up responsibility for everybody else.
Mhm.
And suddenly that was like, oh my gosh, that's a
Yeah.
benefit of it. And when
Yeah.
she tried to find weaknesses for being helpful in the beginning, she couldn't find anything. This is when you're really polarized. You're very
Yeah. That's the extreme. Yeah. Yeah.
that's the extreme. You'll be surprised at how extreme you might be in many areas.
Yeah.
Where you have
Absolutely.
problems,
Mm.
you're going to find yourself stuck in that way. So
Yeah.
that's one example that helps people realize it's your brain. Nobody's going to tell you. You have to fill it in yourself because it's your mind, your brain you're putting that on a piece of paper and looking at. So you get to see it and think about it. You've got some
Yeah.
detachment from it already just by putting it on a piece of paper in front of you.
So do you
The
make
other
the
steps,
unconscious conscious by writing this down, by doing this practice? Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm.
And that's where we show you what you consciously have to bring to the game, right? You consciously, oh, she said, I have to find strengths for helpless. It's like, and she actually had to go out and talk to other people who gave her some strengths to being helpless. And that started to open the door just a little
Mhm.
bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it will just show you where you have blind spots. And on the other hand, you may find you can fill in all four quadrants, right? With lots of words. In that case, you'll still find that emotionally, if this is a problem for you, if it's not, then you already got this handled. If it's not a problem. Like I have one student who everybody else in the room was working on success and failure. And she kept saying, I don't understand why there's a problem. She said, those two go together today and tomorrow. There's no difference. They
Mm.
each, and everybody else was looking at her like, what? Are you crazy? You can't fail. It fails terrible. You can't do that. And she was so non-polarized about it. She had already developed a both and mindset around
Mm.
success.
Yeah.
Did she have it in other areas? No, she did not. But she had it there. That was her
Yeah.
work.
So what you're saying that is this both end mindset and this paradox mindset is not something that you by definition have in general. You can have it on some things and you can absolutely not have it on other things at the same time.
Yes,
Once
absolutely.
again, and or yeah.
The thing about human beings, which always fascinated me when working with us as a species, is everything is contextual. You can do something in one context and you can change context or situation or circumstance, and you can't do it.
Yeah,
You know, like for
absolutely.
me, for
Yeah.
example, when I teach, I am so gracious and talkative and whatever. You put me at a cocktail party, I'm sitting in the corner nursing a drink. Just like I don't have anything to say. And it took me a long time to be able to transfer that ease from being in front of a group to the
Yeah.
ease of being at a cocktail party where you're on your own and you're not performing and you're just like,
Hmm.
it was
Yeah.
interesting to see.
It's interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else you can add to this unconscious six-step program?
The other thing that's in there was the third thing, which is it's always moving. It's always
Mm-hmm.
moving. So you're never going to be able to find a place where you can stop,
Mm-hmm.
all right, and stay,
Yeah.
rest, which of course we want. It that
Yeah.
kind of took me to, yeah, you right, you can't rest.
Yeah.
Unless you understand the polarity or the paradox of rest and movement being a polar pair. Movement and stillness, that's you just have to
Yeah.
be relaxed. What's a polarity that you don't feel comfortable with? It might be something like me speaking in front of a group versus speaking to one person at a cocktail
Mm-hmm.
party. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's always going to be changing. Everything is going to be changing always,
Mm-hmm.
including us. And we're so strapped into this strategy of going for what we want and getting rid of what we don't want. It's when you start to work with this, it's shocking to see how that strategy dominates your life
Yeah.
down to what you want, which restaurant you're going to go eat at. I don't like Mexican food. I like Italian. So I never go to Mexican restaurants. It's that simple sometimes
Yeah.
for how we get ourselves stuck.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? Okay. So a leader,
Absolutely.
because we're focusing on leadership here, leaders have to make decisions all the time. And one of the things that I think her name is Naomi Rothman. She did a beautiful Hidden Brain. She was interviewed on the Hidden Brain thing. She's talking about ambiguity and how
Mm-hmm.
ambiguity, that feeling of emotional, which way to go. She used a good example of it being in a team. I don't remember what the sport was, but her very good friend was on the opposing team. As much as she wanted her team to win, she had a lot of feelings of empathy for her friend who would lose. And how would she deal with that? And the ambiguity of it. Leaders have a lot of ambiguous experiences when they're trying to make decisions because
Mm-hmm.
go back and forth trying to weigh things all the time. It
Absolutely.
isn't that that's going to go away. It's just that you're going to be at ease allowing it. So I think that's one of the key things. We want these experiences to stop. I think it was, let me share some wisdom from one of the Nobel laureate winners, which is Ilya Prigogine. I don't know if you've heard of him before, but one of the things that he said, which speaks to what we're talking about, is that he was postulating that uncertainty was a fundamental tenet of the cosmic universe
Mm-hmm.
because it was constantly creating new moment to moment. That creates uncertainty for us. And I've never met a human being. No, that's not true. There are some human beings who love uncertainty, but the majority of us do not.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spend inordinate number of hours trying to create certainty
Yeah.
and permanence. That's how we
Mm-hmm.
try and do it. It's, you said before, the status quo, let me get there and then keep it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
this is really important to understand if you want to develop a both and mindset,
Yeah.
because it allows you to deal with uncertainty and constant change, which is what life is. My approach to all this was more about just being happy. But as you said in the very beginning, leaders are everywhere. It's not just in business that we have that you're leading when you're a parent or a partner or anything you're in, a group, it doesn't matter. So is this speaking to you at all? Does this sound like something that would be
Yeah.
relevant? Because a lot of people who are into conscious leadership.
I think it is extremely relevant. And I think it is especially the last couple of years because our certainties that we never had, but that we felt we had, have been so disrupted by so many things in the last couple of years. There was COVID, there's the war that is coming closer. There's been wars everywhere
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
It's just that media are jumping on certain ones and are making things bigger and we don't feel safe, we don't feel secure anymore. So I see that. And then there's the acceleration of technology, there's artificial intelligence, there's all these things that we don't know what is going to happen. A lot of people don't know what is going to happen with their jobs, how their children will grow up and what they will find when they are adults, let alone what their grandchildren will find. And
Yeah.
basically, this has only always been the situation. The thing
Yeah.
is that we have built ourselves these frameworks of certainty, of so-called certainty and security and insurance and whatever that has been like shocked and disrupted the last couple of years. And so I see a lot of people like either disconnecting, panicking, or overreacting and flipping because they really want this, they want to go back to how it was. And this,
Right.
it's never
Right.
going to be how it was ever. It never has been. But with the acceleration, of course, it's like we make quantum leaps. So it is
Yeah.
absolutely relevant that we understand that there
Yeah.
is no certainty, there is no status quo. It's only a construction of our mind, and probably we are wired like that in order to make us safe. It's basically
Yes.
also our reptilian brain that wants all these things to,
Yes.
because then it can keep scanning for risk and danger. But this
Yeah.
is not the world we live in. This is not the world we live in. And if we let ourselves taken away with this and live in this stress, we lose all our capacity for kindness, for
Yes.
curiosity, for empathy, for inclusivity. And these are the things to me that will save the world. And
I'm
these
with
are
you.
very feminine leadership qualities. So
Yeah.
absolutely, there's a case for this, Ragini. Absolutely.
I love all you said because it's all so very verifiable. It's all very
Mm,
verifiable. I think the word, which is right above your head on the screen, is conscious. And I think that there's a new level of awareness that we have to get. We have to become more conscious of what we are doing automatically and unconsciously. And it takes a while for people to understand, myself included, that conscious means being aware of something that you're doing without awareness.
mm,
It's up leveling your capacity. It's like you get a big promotion or something, and suddenly you can see you have a much bigger, wider lens to look through. Your lens
mhm.
gets bigger, right?
Yeah.
And I had something the other day which was so fascinating to me. I was arguing with someone about something, and I didn't want him to do something in a certain way, marketing copy, and I wanted him to make sure they kept what I was doing the same, which wasn't working anyway. That's why I hired them. But my point was, I became aware that I was so attached to it that I was actually arguing to keep things the same, even though what I was doing was trying to get them different. So I had to call the guy and say, "Gosh, I apologize. I didn't realize how attached I was to keeping my
Mm,
brand, the right brand." I said, "Just do what you do because I haven't been able to be
mm,
successful. So you do that."
yeah.
But it's interesting to me how consciousness, awareness of something, awareness is like so important. And where you put your attention, there's awareness, then there's attention. Where did you put
Mm.
your attention? If I don't know where I'm putting my attention, I can't get out of it. I can't change it. I have to find out what I'm putting my awareness on. Does that make sense? My
Yeah,
attention.
absolutely. And then neurologically, of course, if you are in your reptilian brain, awareness doesn't live there. This is
Does not.
something that I work with a lot of women also is in order to calm that reptilian brain and activate this prefrontal cortex where you have awareness, where you can become the observer, where you can become present, where you can be creative, where you can see options, where you can build trust. because that's the big problem. We were in the unconscious field, but we skipped a little bit the neurological thing. There's a lot to
Yeah.
say about that as well. We should have another session because we are almost on top of the hour, Rajini, as I told you.
Okay.
The thing is that there's this awareness and this going in meta is something that we have so much trouble to do. Sometimes when you are in a meeting as a leader, when you are in a meeting and you are emotionally involved in the topic, you can find yourself just dramming without understanding that you are impacting the energy in a negative way. And being able to
Right.
step back and to become aware of the energy in the room, of what is going on with your team members. I always say, try to go to the ceiling and look from the ceiling down and
It's good.
seeing the content. But this is something that is very difficult for a lot of people. And then they come out of the meeting and they actually have no clue what really happened there. It's the top of the hour. We have to close. We do this and this. Everybody agrees up and they close the door. And 5 minutes later, the
Right.
real meeting starts at the coffee in the coffee room or in near the restroom or in the garden or wherever people take a breath because we are so much involved in these things that we believe are extremely important and
It's
extremely
true.
urgent. Yeah,
It is. And I think when you get the paradox mindset, the goal is to really be neither for nor against either outcome
exactly.
and still be able to speak to and fight for the one you believe is the right one, because that's
Mm,
your job. Now, that's
mhm,
totally paradoxical. Like, I don't care what outcome happens, and I totally care,
yeah,
right? But if you
mhm,
totally care without the balancing of not caring, it's just like whichever way it goes, it's going to be fine because whatever we choose is going to eventually get replaced by the opposite because
mm,
of impermanence and polarities and movement. Those
yeah,
three things change a life, man. They can
mm,
really change a life if you give them importance.
yeah,
It's wonderful. But
yeah,
anyway, one of the main things is to realize that we're setting up what we like against what we dislike. And that is the mindset that is the problem. We're
yeah.
trying to get a new strategy which says, I can allow both. I can allow both Republicans and Democrats. I can allow both war and peace. It's hard.
Mhm.
It takes a lot sometimes to get that
Yeah.
that conscious of what's possible,
Mm.
depending on how
Yeah.
you look at things.
Yeah.
Perspective is everything.
Yeah.
If you can get multiple angles of vision, if you've got a problem and you can look at it from here and here and here and here and here and here, here, you're gonna be a better leader. That's all I can say.
Mm.
You're going to
Yeah.
be a better leader, make better
Absolutely.
decisions. Okay.
Yeah. We have been trying to put a very complex,
Mm.
not difficult, but complex concepts translated to how to bring that into practice, into life in 1 hour. And you did perfectly, Jenny.
Thank
And
you.
at the same time, this is not finished. I guess it was impossible to believe that we could do this in 1 hour. That was not the goal of our conversation here. The conversation or the goal of our conversation was to create awareness, to create curiosity, to create understanding that things can be differently managed in our brain. And I don't know if you can use the word managed or in consciousness,
Yes,
but that there are
yes.
ways.
As a strategy, managing is way better than trying to get rid of.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I believe that.
Because
Yeah. So for those of you who want to find out more, or for those of you who jumped on this call halfway, there is a replay. It will be here on LinkedIn on this event page, and it will be also on YouTube. And on the event page in the comments, you also find some links because Rajani is extremely generous. So there is a link where you can download an ebook that will give you a little bit more understanding. But there's also a link to access complementary workshops or master classes if you want to find out more. And there's a link if you want to take the online 6 week, Rajani, help me, course.
3 months, three
3
months.
months. Okay. So there's a lot of options for you. You can do all. Yeah, you can do all, or you can start with one. You can choose. But there's a lot of options for you to dig deeper into this extremely important and relevant practice, if I can call it like that, actually,
Yeah,
that
sure.
brings this and or mindset, that brings this paradox mindset into your reality, because that is what it's about. It's very clear that your goal is not to keep this as a concept, but that you are helping
Right.
people in order to integrate that, embody that. You also are writing a book about this, right?
Yes, I'm writing a book called The Enneagram of Paradox, which is also the course, but I've found that bringing the Enneagram personality model, if you're familiar with it, is very helpful to know because it teaches you about everything your unconscious mind is doing.
Mm,
Very helpful to understand the patterns of your unconscious process and then have the tool of I have a tool, which of course I have a tool, and it's called the 6-step process to be able to change that. So
mm.
re-educate it at the same time that you're making this new neural pathway laid down. So it's cool. You want to check it out anyway. You may hate
Yes.
it and say, this woman's nuts. That's totally fine with me. And you may say, oh my God, I don't know why I didn't hear this before. So
Mm.
either way,
Yeah.
check it out if you'd like. And if you don't, that's fine too.
Beautiful. Anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope we created some additional awareness. And but with creating that awareness, we also offered you some tips and also the possibility to go deeper. All the links are in the comments. So I can only invite you to check this out, to go a little bit deeper. It is the answer, it is a solution to a lot of things that are going out right now that are going to be stronger and deeper and more polarizing, as we can already see and predict. So if you want to make the change, if you want to be the change, then this is an opportunity for you to look if this is working for you. So thank you so much for being with us, for joining us. Be aware that there's a replay. So if you want to come back, if you want to dig deeper, if you want to repeat some things, it is always available for you. And Rajani, thank you so much for sharing and for your generosity also with the ebook and the complementary courses. It is a pleasure to talk with you, to listen to you, to
Same here.
share things with you. And we will certainly build another edition because I guess there's a space for more of this. And but it was an amazing start. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you are so welcome, and thank you for inviting me, Helena. I'm so glad to have met you and to understand what you're doing. I'm
Likewise.
100,000% supportive of it and glad to be here. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we see each other next week. Bye for now. Bye.